It is your Classic Metal Show right here on theclassicmetalshow.com. That's a brand new tune called One Night in Hellas from the band Q5 from their new album that also has the word new in it, New World Order. And on the line right now, we have the drummer of Q5. We have Jeffrey McCormick. Jeffrey, how are you, man?
I'm doing great, Chris. How are you doing?
Excellent, man. Well, dude, I got to be honest. I didn't know anything about Q5. You know, I'm a product of the '80s, and I don't know if I just missed it because I was out of the country in the mid '80s or what. But I didn't know anything about this band until literally this record. Got to say, like it though, man. Very classic, hard driving metal, man. Good stuff.
So glad you like it. That means a lot to us for sure. Yeah, it was back in the 80s, all the bands that got exposure were the MTV, that sort of stuff back in the day. Q5, the Steal the Light record, and When the Mirror Cracks, they were kind of only short term, I guess. I mean, the band itself was short term. They started in 83 and then were unfortunately disbanded in 86. So I suppose it was pretty easy to miss with those two things.
Sure.
But quite a few, I mean, we have quite a few fans that have stuck with us from that point until today even. So, it's a huge fanship at this point now because the Steal the Light album had gained such a cult following. So we're happy to say, I mean, that's the reason why Q5 is back, because of the fanship that stayed.
Sure. Now let's talk about that a little bit, because from what I've read and from what I've heard, you guys actually were not even really being a band. It was a different band, and then some organizers from some of the European festivals reached out and asked you to do a set. Is that right? Yeah.
Well, I mean, here's how it happened. Okay, the band Q5 started in '83. I'll give you the abridged version.
Okay, sure.
They started in '83 with guitarist Floyd Rose, who guitar players know from the tremolo locking tremolo system on guitars.
Sure.
And our vocalist Jonathan Kay. And then they took three guys from another very popular band from Seattle called TKO. That's Rick Pierce, Evan Sheely, and their original drummer, Gary Thompson. Mm-hmm. Then they formed Q5 in 1983. 84, they signed with a small label out of the U.S. called Albatross Records.
Okay.
The record did pretty darn well at that point. So they signed with a European label called Music for Nations. Then it was released internationally. And then Polygram picked them up for the second record, re-released the first record and the second record together, and then shortly after that, the original Q5 disbanded.
Okay.
Now, Jonathan, the vocalist, and Rick Pierce, the lead guitar player, went on to form another project called Nightshade.
Right.
And I met Rick Pierce in a mall. Having been a Q5 fan, I knew who he was, and I said, hey, you're that guitar player from Q5? And he said, yeah. And I said, okay, I'm your new drummer. I was pretty bold in those days.
Right.
So he probably thought I was crazy. But anyway, he graciously gave me an audition. So we moved on with the Nightshade project. We had a bass player named Tony Magnelli. We did the first album for Nightshade called Dead of Night on the Music for Nations label. And then I had to leave about a year later. I had to leave the band. I had some family issues.
Okay.
They brought in another drummer, Frankie Rongo, who's a great drummer, great guy. And they got another bass player, and eventually would bring in Evan Sheely. And they did two other records for Hellion Records, which is out of Germany. Mm-hmm. And on the strength of the third album, third Nightshade album in 2009, they were invited to the Headbangers Open Air Festival in Hamburg, which is where we'll be this next week.
Okay.
Sid, the promoter, is also the label owner for Hellion Records, excuse me. And knowing that they had three original members from Q5 in the band, he suggested that they not only do a Nightshade set, but also do a second set as Q5.
Okay.
So the band agreed. They thought, why not? Let's give it a shot and see what happens.
Sure.
And, the fans went crazy. It's the first time Q5 had appeared over there at all. So they weren't sure what to do with that, when they came back, because they were still Nightshade and dealing with the strength of the third record, mm-hmm. the Nightshade record, I should say. And in 2014, they were invited as Q5 to play at the Sweden Rock Festival. So they brought in a second guitar player. They brought in Rick Van Zandt, who's with Metal Church,
right,
to fill in the Floyd Rose parts. And they went over and played Sweden Rock as Q5. And again, the response was so overwhelming that when they came back, they just decided it was time that Q5 needed to be a band again.
Okay.
And the obviously Rick Van Zandt had to go back to his duties with Metal Church, right. So he couldn't stay. And Frankie Rongo, he's a very successful physical trainer. He has his own business, international business even, doing that. And so he couldn't stay either. So Frankie called me and said, how would you feel about being the drummer for Q5 as they relaunch? And I said, absolutely, done.
Right.
And then, then we brought in Kendall Bechtel from Fifth Angel to try to fill in the Floyd Rose duties. Did a few shows with him in Athens, Greece, and in Cyprus. But when we came back to the States, he was not into it. He kind of wanted to do his own thing, and we understood. And so we began auditioning and eventually, thankfully, found this incredible guy named Dennis Turner, who is a brilliant virtuoso and just the coolest guy you're ever going to meet. So we knew immediately he was that guy. So now it's really Q5. As soon as we plugged in, that sound came to life again.
Sure. Does it feel like an old band learning new tricks, or does it feel like a new band, that is fresh upon itself now?
Yes.
A little of both.
Yeah, a little bit of both. I mean, everybody in the band is seasoned. I think that's an accurate word.
Okay.
So everybody's kind of been around the block, and we've known the ins and outs of the business. So I guess maybe that's the old part of it. But the new part of it is that it's a new unit. So there's fresh faces, and fresh ideas. So there's definitely some newness to it.
Sure.
We endeavored to make the album sound like Q5. So and it did from the time we started writing. We felt.
Sure. Definitely.
So I hope that answers your question correctly.
It does. It does. And like I said at the beginning, I'm learning about Q5 on the fly myself. So, what's fascinating to me is that I listened to the new record, which definitely has a old school vibe, but it doesn't sound tarnished or old. It's got a very. I've been telling people, that I've talked to, that it sounds very much like the last. If people want a comparison, the last 4 or 5 Saxon records, like Lionheart or stuff like that. That's
Sure.
very, very in your face, but not not new metalish to where it's just all riffs and no solos or no down tune or any of that stuff. So it's a cool vibe to it, but it feels like a classic vibe. But I think because you guys weren't they weren't Motley Crue level. For a lot of people, it sounds very fresh.
Yeah. Well, and again, on the old school approach, we wanted to make sure that this album was a raw album. I mean, there's no auto tuning, there's no programming, any of that stuff. That's us playing on the album. End of story.
Okay.
So we went definitely old school in that direction too.
Sure. Now for you personally, playing drums, this is a drummer's record, and there's no two ways about it. A lot of people probably say it's a guitar record, but I'll say it's a drummer's record. And if you listen to stuff like Tear Up the Night is the one that jumps out to me, that is a very big arena style drum feel to it. Did that come only because that's who you are, or is that what the material called for, or a little of both, or what?
Again, I'll say yes. I mean, I learned so much of what I know about hard rock drumming from a guy named Ken Mary, which I know a lot of metal fans will know. He was in TKO originally. He was in Alice. He played with Alice Cooper, and he played with House of Lords and Fifth Angel and so many other bands. And I learned from him just studying what he did. And that particular song, it's funny you picked that one out because drumming-wise, that's kind of my homage to his playing.
Okay.
So, and he certainly is one of the best, I think, stadium rock drummers. Period. Okay. So when you say that, it definitely equates. I mean, that's the vibe I was going for on that.
Very cool. Now here on our show, we do play quite a bit of Fifth Angel, which I know you dipped your toe into for a minute or two. And if I'm not mistaken, you've played the one and only show they've ever played. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's well, the one and only public show.
Right,
I mean, they
right,
did
right.
play for record labels and such, but it was the only public performance that they had as Fifth Angel. Yes.
Right. Now,
That was.
go ahead. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to ask, why is it that band, since we're talking about bands that did not gain huge popularity, that band was fantastic, and was, I have to assume for them it was just breaks, they just didn't get the breaks or the right ears to hear it or something.
Well, I mean, this is another one of those casualties of the grunge era,
Sure.
The grunge was just starting to climb when Fifth Angel was coming to public eye. So they just sort of got dismissed, unfortunately, because they're brilliant. That band was amazing.
Yeah, they were.
But times change, I guess. It just sort of happened.
Sure. Now, for you as a drummer, to bounce from these different bands, I'll just give you an ounce of backstory. I'm a drummer, but a very bad one. I am a failed drummer. I'll put it that way.
I'm sure you're fabulous.
No, I can guarantee you I'm not. I was bad at it, and I knew to get a microphone and start talking instead of playing music because I just knew I wasn't very good. But what I did learn when I was playing was how important it is to really sync up with your musicians that are in your band if you have any intention at all to be good.
Absolutely.
Now,
absolutely.
With going from various bands as you have, where you were in Fifth Angel and now you're in Q5 and you're, I'm assuming you're in other bands or you've played in other bands, how difficult is it to consistently change people that you're playing with and quickly find that chemistry to where you can more or less lead the band, because drummers lead the band?
I appreciate that recognition. That's nice. I made it my point throughout my career to be busy. So I've played with a lot of people on purpose, and not that when you say bounce from these bands, it was never my intention to get in, get out of any of these bands. It just sort of was the matter of circumstances. Things didn't work out with whatever, but I wanted to be with each one of these bands. I played with Heir Apparent also in 2006. Right. 2010 was Fifth Angel, and in between that, there's I'm a professional drummer by trade anyway, so I'm playing with studio musicians and this and that. So I try to keep busy. Over the years, I guess I've developed this ability to play with just about anybody. I mean, I sort of adapt to whatever they're doing. A chameleon of sorts, I guess.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Definitely.
That's
no. You can hear it. I mean, you can hear it if you listen to to the various projects as well. You can especially this record. You can tell that you're not just the guy that was brought in to play next to it, play off of a drum track. You could tell that you had a vibe with the guys as the songs were coming together.
That's very kind of you to say. I definitely had a passion. I mean, each one of the projects I select, it has to be something that I'm passionate about. So certainly, taking drum riffs from Ray Schwartz from Heir Apparent, or Ken Mary for Fifth Angel, or now Gary Thompson, for crying out loud. I definitely invested myself in studying what they did and their feel, and I kind of view music cinematically. So I kind of, when I listen to their music, I'm kind of seeing pictures in my head of what they're possibly seeing, and try to put that into play when I go in to play their music as well. So
excellent. Now the band Q5 is signed right now to Frontiers Records, which is a label that does not necessarily take a lot of chances on bands that have not had multi-platinum success. I mean, they do Stryper and Dokken and those types of bands that have sold 20 million records or what have you. What was it about either the band itself or about the record that they heard where they were like, okay, we're gonna go forward with Q5?
Well, initially we got an email from a pair of authors in Italy who had released a book of the top 100 AOR albums of all time, album-oriented rock.
Okay.
And in that book, they had listed When the Mirror Cracks, Q5's second album, as one of those participants.
Right.
So they had written to us saying, hey, we have these friends that have a record label, and you should check them out. And usually that's a red flag to us, like, hey, they're,
Right.
my buddy Bubba in his grandma's basement has, he's pressing CDs.
Right.
But but we said, sure, whatever, we're looking for anything at this point. Why don't you have them send us a note? And sure enough, it happened to be Frontiers.
Wow.
And they said, we know of Q5. Why don't you send us some demos? So we ran into the studio and gave them 4 songs initially, and they were super excited about it, and have been with us and so supportive and so energetic about this album that I can't even say enough good words about them. They're an incredible label.
Very cool. Now, what are you guys' plans for the year? Are you gonna have the opportunity to play some shows or some festivals, or what does it look like?
Well, at this very moment, there's only 2 festivals that we have absolutely confirmed, although there's a lot of stuff on the table. But right now we are booked to play at the Headbangers Open Air Festival on the 29th of July. That's next week.
Okay.
That's with Armored Saint and Ostrogoth and tons of bands.
Cool.
Then the other one that we have confirmed is next April, also in Germany, in Lauda Königshofen, Germany, at the Keep It True Festival, which is an amazing festival over there. If fans don't know about it, they should check it out.
Excellent.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just said excellent.
Yeah. It's a really great festival focusing on old school bands, and they bring a lot of bands back from the dead, and it's brilliant. But there's a lot of stuff on the table. Like I say, we're right now looking for a new booking agent. So, our goal is to play as much as we can, anywhere we can, however we can. So. Sure. Q5 is a band now. We're back and we're fired up.
Very cool, man. Well, as we said, the name of the record is New World Order. The band is Q5. That's a Q and a number 5 for people looking for it online. And Jeffrey, what have I missed that you want people to know about the band or about the record or anything else?
Well, again, I just want to say that this is not a one-off thing for us. We're not back for a cash grab. There's really no cash in this business anymore, so
right.
we're really back to play. I mean, we have this passion and energy that we probably haven't seen since we were in our teens, and so we are back to stay as long as the fans want us to be here. We will be back for more albums, and we will tour as much as possible. And we're just so grateful to the fans because it's because of them that we are here. It's because of them that we are doing what we're doing now. So I'm super grateful to everybody who's listening to the record, who's listening to the old records, and all of the great, wonderful gestures and words that people are giving to us. It's really important to us, and we're grateful for the support.
Excellent. Well, as a tradition on the show, we always let the artist pick a closing track from the new record and tell us a story about it. So what should we wrap this up with?
I think probably one of my favorite songs to play off of the new record as a drummer, just because it's so crazy, is Fear's the Killer.
All right.
Love that song. It's a little one of the faster songs on the record, kind of reminiscent of maybe some Scorpions sounding guitars and drums, and Jonathan just shreds on this song. I love it. And Rick Pearson's solo in the middle of this thing is one of my favorites he's ever done.
Excellent. Well, let's check it out right now. This is brand new stuff from Q5 right here on your Classic Metal Show.